basically announce that this is a subcommittee meeting of the of the Zoning Board of Appeals, in which we're discussing a continuation of Crescent Street. And Amy, if you could read off the notice, please.
Sure thing. Consistent with the governor's orders to extend certain provisions of open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. Persons who wish to do so are invited to click the following link. If you do not have a camera or microphone on your computer, you may also use the following dial-in number, 1-301-715-8592, meeting ID 990-9668-7930, passcode 299045. Please use only dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be video and audio recorded. 1, call to order and roll call. 2, 21-37 Crescent Commons Development LLC, 44, 46, and 48 Crescent Street. And 3, adjourn. Board of Appeals.
Thank you. So board members from the zoning board are Amy Wall and Jim McBain. I chairing the meeting, Amy support, basically. So with that, we left our last meeting with several items basically of importance. And I think we had reached some understanding as to parking issues and like, and we might go over that again, but particularly if it affects anything here, but as to where certain members of the public will park to mitigate any Crescent Hill issues basically at the same time. But I think we've moved on a little bit from that to basically the aesthetics, back to the aesthetics of the building and the massing of the building after solving some of the other on the ground issues, or at least make them better than they were. So with that, I guess I'm going to leave it to Peter or Brian to sort of bring us back onto line on this. And then I have some further questions even after this, of course. So Brian?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing the applicant. Yeah, you were concise. That's exactly where we left off. So knowing that Lieutenant, we have really a couple of things that we want to talk about. We've really kind of fine-tuned the layout of the parking in the building and how that might work, that we want to show the board. With Andy Anderson's time shot, we probably would do that first. And then Peter Sandorf, you were requested that he did a 3D model concept plan to show that building, the unit, Mr. Chair, in the upper part of the building, how that would look, the building will look with and or without that. So Peter will do that, but that doesn't have a lot to do with Joe Anderson from Traffic Advisory. So I think we'll start with kind of the parking layout. If I could possibly share the screen, always an adventure.
Okay.
You should be a pro by now, Jim.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Well, I got a share button down the bottom.
Yeah, pop that up and it will say allow all participants to share.
Now it's showing my board.
It might be under it's one of the security settings. Often it's to the left of participant.
Yeah. Share screen.
Well, that worked.
Okay.
Thank you, Ezra.
Good
Yeah,
job, Jim.
Thank you, because everybody else has been directing me one way or another. So you're the one that's finally giving me the key.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Got it? Great.
Yep.
Okay, so just to kind of familiarize you with the layout here a little bit, what we're showing on this plan is we have both kind of parking levels. So the entrance off of Crescent Street down in this area is the lower parking level. And then up here, off of Crescent Hill is the upper parking level. So to familiarize Ezra, who hasn't had the opportunity of being with us that long, the only access to the lower level garage off of Crescent Street is off of Crescent Street. So you cannot get into that lower level from Crescent Hill, and vice versa on the upper level. You can only get in off of Crescent Hill. Not
So there's no ramp between the two,
no,
which
no.
saves you a lot of space.
Yeah, so one of the things that traffic advisory have brought up was, to try to minimize impacts on Crescent Hill, and something that Lieutenant Anderson had mentioned, and actually Board Member McBain had suggested was, boy, if you could limit a couple of things, if you could limit that only visitors would be allowed at the level off of Crescent Street, on that level of the garage, and they would not be allowed off of Crescent Hill. So Crescent Hill parking level will be designated for residents only. It's not going to bring visitors up to Crescent Hill that then they go in and can't find a space and they kind of meander around looking for different ways in. That is what we're contemplating on how this would work, that only resident parking would be allowed off of the Crescent Hill level. It was also mentioned that it might be a good idea to have a left-hand turn only when you come out of this garage level, so people aren't going up the dead end Crescent Hill and trying to find a way out. But also, if there's only residents accessing here, then certainly they're going to know it pretty quick that there's no way to go up here.
Brian,
Yes.
one quick question just came to me. People that drive in, people that live in this building, how are they going to make the garage door go up and down?
Okay, great question, and we're going to get into that in a minute.
Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking if the people that are on that second level are the only ones with buttons, then a guest won't be able to even go in that door to start with.
They won't.
And when the door is down, on the back of that door can be a message and an arrow on the back side of the door. So as you approach it, leaving as a resident, it tells you to turn left, basically.
And they're going to know to go left, because if they live there, they're going to know that Crescent Hill's a dead end. So why would they?
Right. Let's say it's someone just moved in, or even the first group that moves in, message, and maybe if you say it long enough, they'll get it, basically.
Yeah. So that's a good question on how these, access is going to work. What we've got now for a unit count, or what we're discussing for a unit count, and prepared to put on the table for full consideration of the board, if the subcommittee is on board with us, is a total of 42 units. The makeup is 5 3-bedrooms, 22 bedrooms, and 17 1-bedrooms, for a total of 42. So under our zoning bylaw, we would require 66 parking spaces for a project with that makeup. And we are going to, this layout has a provision for 70 parking spaces. So we've got more than the bylaw would require. But on top of that, we've had discussions internally that through the leasing program, my clients can be, they can pretty much, looking through their leasing program, we feel that we can guarantee that at all times, or we can designate 10 regular parking spaces and the 3 handicap parking spaces for visitors only. So that's pretty significant. Now you've got 13 spaces that are guaranteed, 3 of them handicapped, 10 of them regular parking spaces for visitors only. And the way they would do that is they would do that through their leasing program. Basically commitments with tenants through their leases that they can only have a certain amount of cars. And those visitor parking spaces would be, again, off of the Crescent Street level. So we really think that we're taking a step towards addressing the concerns of the board and the Traffic Advisory Committee and public safety, that, to provide places for people to visit and guarantee that those spaces will be open. They would be designated visitors, so people aren't just, it's not a free-for-all that they're just going into a garage looking for a space. Those spaces could be labeled visitor parking spaces. Now, you bring up an interesting concept, Jim, and it's valuable. Because these doors and the garages on both ends, Crescent Hill and Crescent Street, are going to have a garage door, because we don't want strangers pulling in, and we want to have some control of what's going on there. So my clients had an opportunity to really work on this. And we also took a look at it from the context of what Police Chief Scory talked about at 200-400 Quantapowhat on the use of cameras and automation for public safety with these buildings. And I'm going to kind of let Steve, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of bring up certain things here that maybe you can talk about on how access will work for residents and visitors when people come to visit particular people. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to keep bringing some stuff up here, Steve. So just bear with me. And I think one of the things that Lieutenant Anderson might be interested in right off the bat is that providing for it. This is pretty significant. I was kind of amazed at the significance, but we're providing security cameras all over this building and in the garage. Steve, how many cameras are we talking about?
Talking total of 36 cameras with the potential of 64.
I mean, that's unbelievable. So at least 36 cameras. And this kind of shows initially, we'll work with Chief Scory on, where he might want more, but this kind of gives you an idea in this level of the parking garage where, we have cameras all over the garage. You can see the green dots. This is on the Crescent Street garage, inside the package room, outside the package room, trash room. So all angles of the garage are covered.
Is this a tape system, or is this something that's monitored basically outside?
Actually, it's a DVR system, which you can access to any smartphone, and it can be monitored. It's not a tape system. Those are obsolete.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, tape's obsolete, but digital type of recording is still existing, and I would assume within this. So I was just wondering whether there was actually somebody watching 24/7, so to speak, or whether it's just a recorded system.
It's a recorded system.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long do they keep the recordings for? Is that known at this time or not yet?
Yeah, we actually basically it's an NVR2U. So basically we can add up to about almost 3 weeks backup.
This shows the extent, all in the staircases. This is the next level of the garage. Even outside the buildings on the corners. So we've got the outside of the buildings covered, including Crescent Hill, the back of the building, even in some of the common areas, as you can see, hallways.
I think from a neighborhood point of view, it's good and bad.
Mhm.
And I think the neighbors are going to want to know which way the cameras are pointing. They're not going to want them recording their backyard activities. On the other hand, if they're just recording the edges of the building and what someone might be sneaking around or breaking in or something like that, that's a different issue. So
Yeah, I mean, we can control
be
that.
very
We certainly-
careful about what these are actually pointed at. Internally, it's not an issue, but externally, it could become an issue.
Yeah, well, we'll just work with the police department to put it at angles that they want it at. That can be adjusted, but you can see we have these in all the common areas, hallways, staircases. I think Chief Scory is going to be pretty happy to see this, because that's some of the best friends that the police department can have. So that's number one, that we're going to provide surveillance throughout the complex with significant number of cameras. And then so Steve, now you can let me bring up the next part of this.
Cool.
Talk about the system that we have. This is Steve, you can see this is the Alfred Smart System, Steve. So you just want to talk in general, Steve, how it will work as far as tenants' ability to get in and to also allow visitors into the garage, et cetera?
Sure, of course. So we basically have two, we're gonna have two connected. Do you have that PDF by chance, Brian?
Get everything. Hold on. Which
All
one do
right,
you want?
so you can pull up any one and then I'll just I'll follow your lead.
Okay, hang on.
But basically,
You want the
everyone,
MY3, MYQ3, or you want the logistics?
no. So there's number one.
Oh, one.
it says-
One is Alfred. Can you see that?
Yeah, Alfred. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, Steve.
We're not seeing it though.
Oh, okay.
Just seeing you.
Hold on. I don't know why you guys aren't seeing it. Here you go. Coming up. Is it loading?
Yep,
Yep,
it's
I
there.
see it.
Steve, you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so these are smartphones, smart keys. You know, throughout the building, everyone's going to get their own access portal, and then also access to the Hello Alfred app, which is like a concierge app that you know, in case anybody's ever locked out or anything like that, it's very simple. You know, as far as getting keys and accessing. So then we have.
You want the next one, Steve?
Yeah, go
I
to
just have
number
a
2.
question on that one real quick. If there's a power outage, is there a way to get in with an actual key?
These are all battery.
Okay.
You know, but there's also a battery backup system that would prevent that.
Okay.
Unless you have manual code, it'd just be like a push button code at that time if that happens.
So are you, so you're saying like, you get to the garage door, you just dial in with your phone?
No, we're not there yet.
Okay,
So that is for every apartment door.
okay,
So that's for the tenants to access their own apartment. You go further back, then we have that access, see that system on the left there. That's our connected access portal. There's going to be 2 of those, one located outside of the package room, and then one located on our main lobby. That basically has a big button that says, you know, call management or call the tenant, that sort of thing. And it's video surveillance as well. So if somebody has a, you know, package delivery or anything that they don't have access to the room, we can allow them access, decline them access at that point, and see who it actually is. You know, deliveries, general inquiries, all that stuff, it'll be directly linked to the management, which is us. So going back to your
So
concern.
Steve, that's going to control you providing access to the package room, that Joe Stranger can't just walk into it.
Correct. Yeah.
And you have cameras of who's going in there, et cetera.
Correct. It'll actually take a video of what, you know, even access people that actually have that code. You know, like the regular FedEx or postal service, they'll have access to that at that time, and we'll actually have surveillance on them.
So if FedEx shows up, they'll be able to hit the management button and get you to let them in the door.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
And the package delivery, that's on the guest garage side?
Correct.
That's correct. On the lower level.
Ready, Steve, for next?
So if you see on that right side, you'll see a rear view mirror, RFID card, as well as that little card that goes actually on your headlight. And then that thing that says Lift Master, that square box, is actually an RFID management system that basically gives everyone, that allows everyone to access the garage from 30 feet away. It'll automatically read your car coming up. So there's no push buttons, no getting out of the car. It prevents, you know, traffic at all, and makes everything's seamless. So it improves the flow to and from the property. And again, 30 feet away, once you get 30 feet away, the garage door will start opening and you'll be able to go into the garage. All right.
And is that,
Now,
is that for, as a renter here, does that mean that they have access to both doors, or only can you be controlled at one group basically that parks in the upper garage doesn't have control of the lower garage?
that's actually correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So depending on where your assigned spot is, you'll have access to that garage.
Great, thanks.
And what about the guest parking?
The guest parking. So there's a MyQ app that we're going to use.
Is that next?
Which is the-
Steve, hold on. I think that's
No,
the
it's
next
right on the
slide.
bottom. Yeah, it's right on the bottom there.
Oh, did I?
So the MyQ app basically what it is an app that gives you the ability to open and close that guest door when you have a guest. So for visitors, you'll be able to control it. And then again, everybody have actually access to the lower garage for visitors.
Oh, they would call you, Amy, on your cell phone in your apartment saying, I'm pulling up, I need to get in the garage. You'd be able to open the garage from your unit for them.
Okay.
Correct.
From their cell phone or just only from the unit?
No, from the cell phone.
Okay,
That allows you, if you're out, you know, saying.
that's what
you
I
know,
was
you-
thinking.
you know,
Yeah,
you meet
like a
your mother
dog
and she's
sitter came
before you,
over or
you could be-
something.
You could be
Yeah.
downtown,
Exactly.
saying, open the door for you so you can get in and park.
Okay.
Exactly.
Brian, it sounds like with the system, there's going to be, my concern with traffic going onto Crescent Hill is pretty much no longer, right? You're not going to be able to get through that level and onto Crescent Hill unless you have access as a resident,
That's our goal.
right? No,
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to do it. I definitely think that would it would help at least. I mean, obviously they're still going to have an increase of traffic on that end that they didn't have before, but as far as cars just kind of aimlessly driving through the neighborhood and clogging up the street and having issues with that dead end being clogged up by, lost visitors and things like that, and then having, potentially an ambulance not be able to get to the end of the street. I think that's significantly reduced with this system. So I definitely like that. A lot of my concerns were parking, which I think there's been a good faith effort to address by increasing the parking, especially if your goal is 10 visitor parking spaces. I think that's a lot better than when we first spoke. So I like that. The overall impact to the surrounding neighborhoods and parking is still something I think we have to address at a TAC meeting with, does Crescent Hill want to consider maybe proposing resident-only parking, or are they fine with the way this is proposed here, knowing that there's going to be adequate parking? So that's something that I don't like to do without adequate input from the neighborhood. So that's something I'd like to go back there with. I'd like to get a little more input from the members on that left turn only, if there's any legal options to post that. But I think on the developer's side, if like Jim said, or if you could put it on the garage door or even have it upon exiting the garage, that it's a left turn only, that would definitely help. But I think, I don't know, it's almost a nil point really, because like you said, Brian, it's going to be it's actually going to be all residents that, after their first day there, they're going to know you have to take a left. I think you'd only make that mistake once. My concern, obviously I don't want people going down Crescent Hill at all. But my concern was more the visitors, the deliveries, the things like that getting lost and clogged down Crescent Hill, because it's not a cul-de-sac. It's really not easy to turn around down there unless you live there and you're pulling into a driveway. So I think that concern is, has definitely been addressed to a degree. Illegal parking was my concern too, and I think that's been addressed by the delivery vehicles having access off of Crescent Street. not being able to pull up front and really having no purpose of pulling up front and walking through the front door because there's nothing to do with the front door. All the package delivery, trash removal, things like that would be on the Crescent Street access driveway on the southern side there. So I like that. I would still like the TAC to look at any improvements we could make as a town to Crescent Street to limit some of the visibility issues that already exist there with the corner of Princess Street and things of that nature. But I think that's more on our end to discuss at our next meeting. Have a little bit of community input about if there's any other proposed changes that would help the residents on Crescent Hill. I don't want to speak for them, but maybe they're for resident parking only, and I don't even know if we would be able to do it, but I would certainly try for them if that's something they wanted to pursue. Or maybe they're fine with having it the way it is, and if that works, that would definitely work for me. But I'd like to get a little bit of their feedback as residents there, because this is going to have a big impact on them. So if there's anything that the TAC can do to mitigate that impact, I'd definitely be open to hearing that and getting their feedback, and then proposing any regulatory changes to town council and supporting them on that end. Yeah, that's.
Do you like the camera? Are you a supporter of the cameras?
I think the cameras are good, and to answer some of the obviously it'd be more for the chief to speak about, but in looking at some of the other developments in town that have adequate camera coverage, it's very pointed, right? So it's not like a big wide angle lens that's pointing toward neighborhoods. It's like at a door, it's at a side of the building. So when they install the cameras, especially with some input from us or a security company, they're not looking into areas where they're getting a view of the neighborhood. They're very pointed to where they want to surveil. So it might be a door, it might be a garage door, a driveway, things like that. So I think that's definitely a good thing, and it alleviates some concerns about package theft and things that we see in developments of this size and larger. So that's definitely a plus there. And the provided parking spaces, so it's 4 extra spaces, but Brian, like you spoke about, if through leasing they're able to provide 10 spaces to visitors, I think that's a significant improvement. So I think all these things together are definitely helping make this much more digestible and a little bit safer, because I think safety initially was a big concern of mine. There was just a lot of potential for things to happen, and I think there's been a lot of good faith effort to reduce that potential. Obviously, it's a development with 42 units, and in a neighborhood that's not used to that. But I think there's definitely been a lot of changes that I like, and I'd like to bring that to TAC. All these changes, and then address any other residents' concerns about existing conditions that we might be able to improve on. Outside of that, I'm good on my end for right now. Like I said, we'd like to have another meeting and kind of tie up any loose ends as far as signage and things like that, if the engineers have any final concerns. But I think this is it looks a lot better on a from parking perspective, the flow and access, and limiting really pretty much everything from Crescent Hill besides those parking spaces that you're looking at right now, which would be residents only. So I think that's definitely good. Definitely good. We're in a much better place, I think.
So Lieutenant, when's the next TAC meeting?
Well, it's I'm going to propose September 3rd as the next one. I'm just waiting to hear back from the committee members to see if that works. But we're going to try for September 3rd, if not sometime early to mid September.
Okay, thank you.
Lieutenant, I think we talked about this before, but I can't remember. Did we talk about where the sidewalks are currently?
No, I don't think we spoke about the sidewalks.
Okay. I'm wondering if that's something that maybe an improvement that the developer would be interested in looking at, to see sidewalks maybe going across Crescent Hill, across Crescent Street.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something you have any input on, or Brian.
Crosswalks, Amy?
Yeah,
Crosswalks.
I don't think there's any crosswalks really in that whole area.
You're talking about accessible crosswalks.
Well, yeah, that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
ADA compliant and crosswalks. Yeah.
I can run that by the town engineer and see, there's a lot of times I think there should be crosswalks in certain neighborhoods, but with sightline visibility and things like that, they just don't kind of mesh with the existing conditions. But it's definitely something I can bring up at the next meeting where we kind of discuss the changes.
Okay, that would be helpful, because I think from my recollection, I know there's one down by Water Street, and I don't think there's another one until Eaton Street. If I'm not, oh no, maybe there's one at Otis. I can't remember, but I think there's kind of a big stretch where there isn't sidewalks in that area.
No, you're right. You're right. And visibility might be an issue, but if it isn't,
Okay.
it could be a good spot for one. So
Okay.
Generally, I think, Amy, from my
Mhm.
perspective, as these projects come along, we ought to be upgrading the sidewalks, basically. And you end up doing a lot of demolition basically on the sidewalks anyway. So having, even if you have just accessible areas in certain areas as projects come along, then they get, after a while, the whole sidewalk system is functional basically.
Right.
Because there would be several places on this where in fact, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we may
Yeah,
already have.
That is
some-
that's brand new. Yep. That was put
Yeah,
there.
there's no, so this is
2 years.
kind of going in front of our project. This is helpful. Coming up Crescent, this is Crescent Hill. The
Mhm.
sidewalks are in pretty good shape, but Amy's right. There's really not a lot of crosswalk
Right.
connectivity.
I will definitely bring that up at
So this Crescent Hill,
next
Amy.
meeting.
It's a good point. I think there might be a crosswalk up at Center Street if we go all the way up here.
Yeah, I think it's at Center Street. But actually, I don't know if it goes,
Not at Princess.
no, it's
Yeah,
not at
it's at Center,
Princess.
Amy. It's all the way up at Center Street.
Is there a four-way one there? Oh, there
Yeah.
is. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that whole stretch, there's nothing.
Yep.
Okay, so it might be something, yeah, if it's something that's, obviously if the sight lines are an issue, then that's an issue. But if it's something that could be done, it might be worth them looking into. And like Jim said, the sidewalk repair and the likes for that area.
Sure. I'll definitely bring it up and I will, I'll let everybody know when the next meeting is. Hopefully it's September 3rd.
Perfect.
The good
All
thing
right.
is they already have handicap ramps at Crescent Hill.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
On both sides? Oh, yeah, both sides. Oh, but it goes to nothing, but that's the other side of the
Yeah.
street anyway, so.
But that might be,
Yeah.
maybe here is a good spot for a crosswalk, depending on.
Mhm. Right,
Right in here, to get people across if they want to go downtown, then they can, because they got sidewalks on the other side.
right,
I'm making everybody dizzy. Sorry about that.
yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure Lieutenant Anderson saw all that, had a chance to comment, which he did. You know what?
Just quickly, do you include discussion about bike storage and all that stuff?
Yeah, we do have, Steve, do you want to talk about the bike storage?
I mean, if you already covered it, that's great. I just want to be sure.
No, we
somebody
should,
knows.
I mean, Steve, why don't you just touch on that if you could? Steve Bichelli.
Sure. Yeah. So on the lower level, we actually have bike racks. Is shows 10. I think we can get 12, but right now, yeah, if you pull that up, right, it does show parking for bikes on the lower level. Just go to the right there. Yeah.
Where are we looking? Sorry.
Oh yeah. Once you zoom in, Bri, it says bike rack actually. Right at
Right here.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
thank you. Then how do they get in there?
On the other side of the parking spaces, this is kind of a walkway.
Oh, that's open, okay.
It's
I
open.
was thinking that was a hallway, okay.
You did the same thing I did.
then, 3 of the handicap spaces would be open to visitors for anybody, right? So if we have a handicapped resident that needs a handicap space, they would be assigned a handicap space. And then that would actually open up another conventional space for visitor. Because under the ADA, we have to be able to, kind of accommodate folks that need that accommodation for handicap accessibility.
All right, any other discussion on this? Ezra, do you have anything further? Turn on your mic.
No, the only other thing I would have had was, and I think Lieutenant Anderson mostly covered this, but the question whether you wanted some signage on Crescent Hill, just letting people know, don't come in here to try to park. The visitor parking is on Crescent Street. And likewise, something directing delivery people, don't try to park on the street and bring it to the front door. Go into the garage.
We discussed some of that last time, so I think
Okay, yeah,
directional signage, I think, as we get further into this, is probably important.
Yeah.
In an aesthetic way that makes sense, so it's not like big 24-inch letters across the doorway or something.
right, exactly. So, yeah, that's all I had. I'm still trying to, see where we're at in the total thing, but it seems like we're coming to some closures. That's good.
I think the other piece is that's worth mentioning here is the upper garage, because of the limited amount of sidewalk to the edge of the building, and we've done this otherwhere, basically, when the garage door opens, there is some sort of flashing or beeping type of device that notifies a pedestrian, particularly a handicapped pedestrian, that the door is open, basically. So that will have to be instituted, and that's only in the upper garage, because the lower one's got plenty of space for someone to see traffic coming or going, but on the other end, it does not.
You see, Jim, on this plan, Rick is calling out the left only in the floor there.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think that's to remind all of us, either we do something at the door, but we're going to do something there.
Yeah, so, but what I'm talking about is like we have at the old Y, basically, when the garage door opens,
Yeah.
basically, there's something that will tell a person, basically, that the door is opening, so that the pedestrian is aware that a vehicle is in movement. A lot of these are in Boston, basically, but we have I know of at least 2 in this town, basically, where we have these sort of situations, and it's much tighter in those other situations to the sidewalk than this would be, but still, it's limited, so it really will become necessary. All right, we
Okay.
covered all of it.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Have we covered all of what of this piece at this point?
Have on our end.
So then we should move on to the isometric, I guess, and the planning on the upper level.
Hearing, I'm going to hand it over to Peter Sanduas.
Can you give control to Steve DeFury?
You should have it.
Okay, go ahead, Steve. Here's the massing model. You can all see it now.
Yes.
And we're going to toggle, this is something that we talked about at the last meeting, toggling the unit in the far right rear, 4th floor, on and off. So Steve, right now the unit is there in the back. Now Steve will toggle it away. There it is away. And do it again, Steve. Put it back. And then again, pull it away. As we talked about that mansard that's forward on the top of the 3rd floor, is creating almost like a parapet wall where we're then inserting the the terraces for the front unit and that rear unit. And you put it back, Steve, tucked in behind there. And then I also thought it was helpful, and Steve is very helpful with this. We're going to spin around a little bit so you can see the building from a couple of different angles. You know, to get this vantage point, we'd have to be flying or up pretty high, right? But it helps us to see how that sets back in there. Steve did a
So this is behind the site, sort of up in the neighborhood, is that right? Not on the street.
say it again, I'm sorry.
Is this, right now, we're sort of like up in the neighborhood? We're not down on Crescent, we're,
No, we're gonna show you being down in Crescent. We'd be like,
So, Peter, can you orient us to, the front of the building on Crescent Street and, where we
yeah.
are? Yeah.
Steve, take us back if you would. So this would be if we were probably 100 feet above Crescent Street, but this is the Crescent Street facade. Steve can show us. Steve, put us down on Crescent Street. So we'd be looking up at the building like that.
Yeah, so you're about 200 feet away when you start to see anything beyond the 200-foot mark. You can start to see where that mass starts to come out if that unit was there. And then it's the same thing if you kind of go to the right side, you just start to see the dormer windows appear. And this is all with that grade being flat. I know the further you get away from Crescent Street and Crescent Hill, that grade starts to decrease and get even lower. So you're probably looking at, we discussed today, if you're at farmland, you can probably see that unit on the top floor. But everything probably closer to that, it's going to be tucked in behind that mansard on this side.
And Steve, so that, because Ezra isn't familiar, do you have the one where we inserted it back into the massing model that we had before?
Yeah. So Jim, this was the one you had before with the sort of the building masses around, and then a previous iteration of our building. And then this just shots to show now with the tweaks that we've done with the roof line, sort of what the scale is with the rest of the neighborhood. So you can kind of see that this building all the way to the left.
We're not seeing it, Steve. It's in from the other view. Not yet, anyway.
Interesting. Hold on.
Yeah.
How about now?
There you go.
So this is with the new building inserted now, sort of at the scale with the rest of the buildings. So you can start to see proportionally with the rest of the roof lines and the scale that it's still fitting more comfortable than what we had previously.
Can you, the building that's to the right, which is your abutting neighbor, can you go up to the second floor at his building and look up towards the roof?
So I actually did. Can you guys see the model?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I actually did from his third floor, kind of based off of the height from grade, what you would be seeing. So from his third floor, if that unit was on, you would just start to see the gables of the dormers just starting to poke ahead above the mansard roofs. If it was off, that roof starts to get pushed back, so it disappears, but nothing where he's looking into people's unit on that third floor.
Okay. You might want to do a spin around so everybody can see this, the whole of it.
and where's the garage entrance here?
So the garage entrance would be here.
I see, it's on this, got it.
It's down into the driveway. He hasn't fully modeled the other sides, but you still can see it, right, Steve? The other entrance on the left. I don't remember if we put the door there.
Yeah, the door is not there, but you
The door would be right there. Yeah.
So can we look at from the back, please? I don't know how much you've modeled the back.
It's there, but it just doesn't have the windows and doors yet.
All right. I guess, given that it sits down in the roof, it doesn't show up as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
But then that leads me to another whole question that we haven't asked at all. And I know it's going to be asked at the board eventually, so I might as well ask it now. Roof units.
So Steve, if you tilt up a little to the upper roof, see this suppression here, and it's gonna, I think it can even be bigger. We can put all of our HVAC, and we can show it on this model as well. The units sitting up there. That being said, there may be some units to the right, away from where the terraces are there as well. But I think we have that opportunity with this mansard to inset all of the units up above the fourth.
All right, you should start looking at that in relationship to the height of the parapets. The other thing is the override for the elevator.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's going to be right out front in the major massing piece that represents the entry.
Yes.
And how high is the override going to stick above the roof? And how do you treat it so it becomes part of the building mass? The other thing I don't think's appropriate, but I know why you're doing it, is the shed dormers as opposed to the pitch dormers. I know you're trying to get 2 windows in there, but where that whole roof system is mostly pitch dormers, it looks a little weird when you stick the sheds in there, particularly on the front and the major sides of the building. So you need to find another vocabulary basically that works with everything else.
We talked about that a little today, and I think if we can't, in rooms where we can take them to a single, we'll take them to a single. If we feel it's the living area, we want the double, I think we're going to put a low pitch there and lose the shed. When we were massing this today, we felt the same thing.
Yeah, it needs some study, but that's just an aesthetic piece. Basically, it really doesn't make much difference in the massing. It just makes a difference in the appearance of the building.
Peter, can you point to that for us lay people? Because I don't know.
Steve can, right here. See how that's kind of, what it's saying is the upper mansard roof is continuing to a shed. We would call it a shed, and it's allowed.
Yeah.
And you get
So
the
what
same
Jim
thing
is
over on
saying
the
is
right.
everywhere else, if you look, is a gable, a small A dormer. And
And
then
there's 2 more there, right?
money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and there's some as you start to move towards the back as well, but I think we can look at it,
Yeah.
what that relationship is.
I think it's most important on the front and basically on the hillside to keep the architecture basically together. So that does need some study. But again, I say it's just a aesthetic point, not a massing point.
Right.
I had another aesthetic point too. I had brought it up before, but I don't know where we left off with it. That the part of the wall that sticks out that we're looking at, that flat area without windows, what do we think with windows?
Where are you, Amy? I'm trying to.
With the piece that we're talking, that's either on or off on the top floor.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah.
plain wall right there.
Yeah.
I mean, from up here, obviously it stands out. I don't think from the street level it would, but I just don't know if that's something you've looked at.
No,
Go ahead.
I don't think it's necessary just for aesthetics to stick a window in, which might end up in a place where you don't want it to begin with.
Mhm.
Like ends up in a bathroom or something like that or whatever, basically. But, with as much activity as going everywhere else, and the fact that the angle of view probably won't be seen that that's close by.
Mhm.
I'm not sure it makes any difference though, but what do you think about that element there to begin with?
I mean, I feel the same. I think that you said it kind of didn't have as much of an impact as I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
Take it away again, Steve. Just go back and forth.
Yeah, so the main difference really is if you look at this piece, it's extruded out for that unit. And then once you take it off, it kind of insets flat here. Regardless, you're still gonna have a mass up there for the staircase going up to the 3rd floor. So you put that unit back on, it's kind of hidden from the front. Once you take it off, that mass is still there. It's just how much of an extrusion you have for that extra unit.
I think that's why it doesn't stand out as much as I thought it was, because there's still something there.
Exactly. Yeah, agreed.
All right.
But when it's taken off, we are losing 2 units, correct?
No, we would lose one. That's one unit there.
Just one, okay. Oh, because it's flipped sideways, right?
Right, that's
Okay.
right.
And is there anywhere better to lose a unit instead of up there?
Say that again, Ezra?
If you're contemplating removing one unit for massing purposes, why would it be that one and not something looking right in a neighbor or something, you know, like? I mean,
Yeah, this one has just been as Jim and I were working through this in the last few months, that one's kind of been a point of contention, I would say, just because as we're breaking down the hill, trying to get the roof lines to drop. That's why we were focused in on that one.
Okay, that's more contentious than like the 3rd floor way over on the right.
Yeah.
The way this was laid out originally, that 4th floor went all the way to the far right. So what I was looking for was this building to step down the site, basically, and be one building, but at the same time give the appearance of 2 buildings in its massing, basically. So yeah, this corner has had a lot of discussion basically in order to do that, and this is what we came up with. And if you pull that building out, what you end up is just a bunch of windows on a corridor going to the back area, basically, or it's pulled out and it's a unit, and it still gives the appearance from the street level, anyways, and from the front side, that this building breaks along that line. Could it break back further? Yeah, it could. Does that make any sense? No, because it balances out the front entry when you have it flanked by these 2 smaller sections, basically, particularly on the street side. So this is where we settled out at that after many, many discussions. Ezra, as you looked at the rest of this, and is there anything else that you've come up with, thought of, any insight that might be helpful here?
Not a whole lot really jumped out at me. I mean, normally, you know, I'm coming in kind of late, and it seems, you know, as long as mostly what we find is the biggest issues is, you know, the access, fire safety, you know, stormwater runoff, that kind of stuff. And it seems like those are not issues at this point, which is nice because you've really saved your time to think about context and how it fits in. You know, it seems like, you know, in terms of that, I mean, you know, architecture, there's plenty of beautiful buildings that people don't want to see where they're living. It's more a matter of what fits. And I think you're really making some good gestures to make this fit in with the context, even though it is clearly out of scale. So I think that's really what I'd focus on. I think this split of the, you know, the driveway access is really clever. The way of making it feel like 2 buildings really works. You certainly have to get into some materials at some point, but, you know, and I guess I would hope that next down the road, there is something around landscaping, screening, lighting, all that stuff. But I think you're right where you want to be at this point.
I think we're, I think the intent of this group is to go to the board at the next meeting. So, and I'm sure the board's going to ask your opinion on a bunch of things, since you've been brought into this. So think about that for a moment. And
Sure.
be prepared. I'm right, and Brian, you're still on that course.
Yeah, I mean, I think the purpose of this subcommittee was to really, deal with some of the issues that were laid out by traffic advisory, public safety, the board members themselves. And, I think, that's what your subcommittee was charged with, to work with TAC, Lieutenant Anderson, on their behalf. And I think we've made a lot of progress. And I think, we're ready to bring it back to the board to show them where we are at this point.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm not interested in getting into Ezra's list of, materials and landscape and lighting, only because I think we've reached a point where, in fact, we need solid response back from the full board, without getting jammed up with the other 3 items or a few more, basically. So we're at a point where we got numbers, where we got parking, where we got massing, where we got appearance, basically, and speak to that, and then hone it down to, like I said to Peter, the windows and some of the stuff that materials and landscape and lighting, like Ezra had talked about. But for this next meeting, I think we've spent a lot of time on this, and I think we need to go to the board, basically, what we've come up with at this point, and make a full presentation and let them respond to it.
I think that makes sense. That you need to know from them, is this a workable project?
Yeah.
There's no point in deciding where trees go, or whether it's blue or green, until can people imagine this being approved?
Yes.
Yeah, and Ezra, we still have to do drainage. I mean, you brought that up. That was a good point. So, Rick Salvo, our engineer, has not submitted a drainage report to the town engineer yet, because he's been waiting for, kind of to get to this point. So.
Right. So that's a little bit of a risky proposition. That, I like to assume that those engineers can solve everything. It's just a question of money. But if however you do the drainage is going to change, where access is, what the massing is, then we would have wasted a lot of time here. But I'm hoping on a site like this, it's basically a matter of sizing the systems correctly and having the peer review agree that that's right.
Yeah, and he has looked at it. He's comfortable it will work, and it will meet the requirements. It's just that it hasn't been fully designed yet.
And the same is true about water, sewer, that stuff.
Yeah, there's no issues with that.
Well, it's also not like Salem Street, with some of those buildings on Salem Street where there's a lot of parking outside. The parking's all inside.
Right.
And what's left basically is an edge system around there to make sure the drainage doesn't go into somebody's neighborhood. But since this is on the lower edge of the hill,
right,
everything's sort of going down towards Main Street, except for what goes basically towards Water Street. So it's not, I can't see this in the same vein as a project that's got a lot of outside parking,
right,
that causes a
not
drainage issue. So
not a wetland, or nothing like that. Right. Exactly.
Yep. So if nobody's got anything else, I think it's time to close the meeting.
Well, Jim, how do you and Amy feel where we are at this point? Because
I personally am perfectly fine to throw this back at the board and say, here's where we're at. Let them respond to it. Let them ask questions that we probably already asked and answered, basically, because we're not providing them with the questions, and we're not providing them with the answers. So they're going to have a lot of the same questions we had. On the other side of it, though, we've already cleared the path on some of that stuff. So I'm sure they're going to have different ones. So I'm fine with pushing this back to the board to get a response. I don't want to go any further until we get feedback from them. Amy?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the more we do, it's just the same questions are going to be asked again by them. And it almost defeats the purpose of doing this. So I think it would be helpful too for the board to see kind of where we came from to where we are now. So they can see a side by side of the progress. And yeah, I guess I'm just ready to hear what they all have to say when they see it as well.
So that's where we are at.
Right. Ezra, are you available for the 18th? That's the next board meeting.
Should be. It's 7 o'clock or so.
Starts at 7, and since this is ongoing, it will be at least one of the first 2 projects, I assume, before the board.
Yep, I can do that.
So you wouldn't have to stay until 12 o'clock.
Yeah, and is
Only
that
we're
all
that
still, we're
lucky.
still virtual or not?
Yes.
Yes, it's Zoom. It's Zoom. So there's no driving time.
Right, yeah, I can be there. That sounds great. And I do think, the other thing, and I think you probably emphasized this already, but just sort of reminding people that we already know this is out of scale with what the zoning would allow. That's, by its very nature, that's what 40B is. The question is, where did it come in and what input have you given and how have the applicants responded to those concerns, to show where you're at now. And I think, Jim, the way you framed it is pretty good. You're not here to do a hard sell. You're here to say, this is where it's at. Is this what the board, can imagine working, with the full board?
Yes, and at the same time, the public, even though they are attending these meetings, have not had the chance basically to voice their opinion. So this next meeting will give them a chance to voice their opinion, whether they've attended these meetings or not, and whether the last time they saw this was at the last ZBA meeting, and they're coming up to date just like the zoning members themselves. But those that have hung in here to attend these meetings basically are having the opportunity to hear it ahead of time and even be prepared ahead of time with their comments as well. So, it's a good stopping point, I think, for this process at the moment.
Sounds good. And when do your 180 days run out, or you got an extension on that? Is that right?
Yeah, we extended that, Ezra, till the end of October, so we have plenty of time.
Okay, good.
And this is a cooperative effort. We're not looking to.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah,
We've been going through this on a number of projects basically to avoid the 12 o'clock night meetings where everybody's making design decisions or directions basically. So a smaller group basically can work it out, hopefully get over some of that stuff so that everybody, 7 people aren't basically crawling all over each other, basically con off this stuff. We can clean the decks because we got so much other things to do at
Yeah,
this point.
but I do think it was really smart to deal with some of those circulation issues and have Lieutenant Anderson, saying he thought a lot of this worked pretty well. That's kind of because a lot of those issues can really make people anxious about even moving forward at all. So,
Yep.
good.
Exactly. All right. Then with that, I'm going to close this meeting at 5:06. So with that, the subcommittee for the zoning board will close a meeting discussion on Crescent Street this evening. Next meeting will be the zoning board meeting next Wednesday, I think it is, at 7 o'clock. And Amy and myself are signing off at 5:06.